Good afternoon. My name is Yvonne Johnson, and I'm the Multimodal Teaching Coordinator in the Faculty Development and Instructional Design Center at Northern Illinois University. And I'm very happy that you have joined us today. We are going to be talking about Universal Design for Learning. This session is the first online session in a series of 3 sessions related to Universal Design for Learning. The session today will focus on somewhat of an overview of Universal Design for Learning. Then we'll also get more in detail on multiple means of engagement. The second session in this series is scheduled for next month, March, and in that workshop we will be talking about multiple means of representation, the second component of the Universal Design for Learning. And then in April, we will host our final in this series of 3 sessions, and in the third Universal Design for Learning series, we will talk about multiple means of action and expression, and that session will be scheduled in April of this year. So we look forward to having you online in as many of those that are of interest to you and that you have time to participate in. As I said, my name is Yvonne Johnson. I work in the Faculty Development Instructional Design Center at Northern Illinois University. The goals for the workshop today is that we will have an introduction and an overview of the Universal Design for Learning concepts. And the Universal Design for Learning concepts include 3 different areas. The first component of the Universal Design for Learning concept is referred to as multiple means of engagement. Those are connected with the affective networks of the brain. And we'll talk mostly about the affective networks, the engagement aspects today. The other 2 aspects of Universal Design for Learning relate to multiple means of representation, which are the recognition neural networks of the brain. And the third component relates to multiple means of action and expression. And those are the strategic networks of the brain. So as I said, today we'll talk about the affective network, and we'll look at some tips and strategies that you can use for motivating and engaging learners in your classes. Before we get into the more specifics, let's consider Universal Design for Learning in the broader sense. When we talk about Universal Design for Learning, we're coming from the framework of designing instruction that is usable by all students without the need to adapt the instruction or to specialize to the design. So from the initial stages of the instructional design process, Universal Design seeks to create learning environments that are usable and facilitate learning for all of the students. So we're not talking about accommodations, we're talking about designing instruction that benefits all students. And the origins of Universal Design for Learning relate to including flexibility in the various aspects of the instructional design process. So we include flexibility in terms of the goals, the instructional methods, the materials, and assessments, so that when we're working with diverse groups of students, that we're supporting all of their learning. And there are some tools on the CAST site that provide you some steps for actually building lessons that support this Universal Design for Learning. And this is the web link, and I will, as I said, record this and share the recording with you, so you will have these resources after the session is complete. When we take Universal Design for Learning to the curriculum level, we're talking about providing a wide range of different options for students who come from various backgrounds, whether they have different abilities, they come from a wide range of areas, they have a variety of ethnic backgrounds, some are differently abled, we have different language skills and people who speak many different languages, they have many different experiences. Some may be new to the concepts that you're discussing in class, some may be experts. And we also have students with a wide range of learning styles. So when we design the curriculum from a universal design perspective, we want to make sure that we're addressing the needs of all of the students. Now, that's not to say that you create hundreds of different lessons, but you do include flexibility to try to make sure that the different learners' needs are addressed in the teaching and learning design. This screenshot is from the CAST network, and it's an organization that has done extensive work on universal design for learning. And when we're talking about universal design for learning and the affective component, which is the major focus of today's session, we're talking about different neural areas of the brain. So for the affective, for the engagement, the zone of the brain is highlighted in the lime green. And when you consider engagement and designing courses and instruction to engage the students, you think about things like motivation. How do you keep the students engaged? How do you motivate them? Another aspect of the universal design for learning that has been addressed by the CAST organization, which we'll talk a little bit about in a minute, is multiple means of representation. So you can see that the neural network is highlighted in the purplish section, and it's a very large section of the brain. And in terms of multiple means of representation, we're talking about the knowledge and the resourcefulness of the learners. And that would be the second session that we're hosting in March. And then the last section relates to action and expression. So you can see the neural network that is highlighted for that. And that session will be hosted in April. And during that session, we'll talk about strategies that you can incorporate in your course to help students to reach their goals, help them to set their goals, and help them to be able to monitor their own progress. So these three different components have been extensively researched under the CAST organization. And I'll provide you the links to that session in a little bit. Another way to look at the universal design for learning is to look at it in this way. The affective component is the section we're going to talk about today. So we're concerned with getting learners engaged in the process. We want them to not only engage, but we want them to stay motivated. How are they going to be energized and excited about your class and about their learning? Because if they're excited about learning, then they'll be more creative, they'll get more out of the class, and they'll put more into their learning. And we'll also talk about challenges. You need to find that balance of what's the appropriate level of challenge, not too high, not too low, to sustain the motivation for the learners. And that will vary from learner to learner. And then the multiple means of recognition, that's the second session. That's how learners gather facts. How do they categorize what they see and what they hear and what they read? So when they read new information, how do they make meaning out of that? How do they create knowledge? I remember when I was working a number of years ago on my dissertation, and I was reading extensive amounts of information, and one of my professors said, Yvonne, you need to find categories to assign these. So if you're reading 50 articles, you need to find categories to put these in. So I came up with categories related to instructional design or inclusive online learning communities, things like that. And so when you're teaching learners, they need to also have these categories so that they can analyze information and construct meaning and connect it with knowledge that they already have. And then in the third aspect of universal design for learning, that's the strategic aspect. So learners need to be able to plan, and they need to organize their tasks. They need to keep their calendars up to date. They need to break up those large projects so that they're able to be successful and to meet the deadlines in the class and learn as much as they can. And organize their thoughts and express their ideas in a way that makes sense and is cohesive. So that session will be held in April of this year. Okay, so moving into the affective discussion that we're going to be focusing on today, we're going to be thinking about stimulating interest and motivation for learning. So let's do a whiteboard activity now. What do you think, from your perspective, what motivates students? In your class, if you have students in your class, what are you doing? What are they doing? What motivates them? And you could type it on the screen. Okay. Discussion, yes. Okay. Group discussion, yes. Awesome. Okay. Information that is relevant, yes. Interaction, okay. Satisfaction, yes. In-class activities, okay. They want to get good grades, yes. Involvement. Always need to be prepared. Relevant outcomes to activities, yes. Okay, so just in a very short period of time, this group has created a relatively long list of a variety of different aspects of a teaching and learning environment that motivate students. Prizes, being heard, their voice. We talk about honoring the voices of people, in-class activities, prizes, yes. Someone put grades, okay, so they could be, prizes might motivate them to continue to work on things. Assessments always need to be prepared. Okay, so those are quite a few different ideas about how to motivate students. So we want to keep those in mind for when we are going through the discussion today, and think about how you can incorporate these ideas to try to keep students engaged and motivate. So how can you keep the content interesting? How can you keep them engaged? Satisfaction. That can be some of these are very complex concepts, because what's helps one student become, reach satisfaction may not help another student. So it's very important to kind of think about these in terms of the individual students as well. That's an excellent list. Great job. Thank you. Okay, so now this is a picture of students who, on the first day of class, they're all excited. They really want to learn. They're sitting at the edge of their chairs, and they have their notebooks out, and they have their computers out, and they're really engaged. So this would be a dream class. We want to walk into the class and have everybody excited about the class. So if this was a first day of class in a course that you're teaching, or if you're not teaching a course, think about a course that you've been in. And let's talk about what you think motivates students, and what you might do in terms of connecting with that when you're teaching your class. So if students are motivated to learn, when they're ready to learn. So there's a balance between their temperament and disposition. So, they're having a pretty good day, and they say, yeah, I did my homework. I really like the topic. So what can we do to help students be ready to learn? Is there anything that you can do as an instructor to sort of help students reach that balance between temperament and disposition? I teach a class that is a required research course for master's and doctoral students. And so everyone is not necessarily excited to be in the class because it's a required class. So I often get students who don't feel that they are proficient at research. So what I do in the very beginning of the class is I ask them, okay, who was required to take this class? And they all raise their hand because they're all required to take the class. And then I say who wanted to take the class, and I tell them to be honest. And they, basically there's just a few people who said they really wanted to take the class. So what I do then is I ask them, well, why weren't you so interested in the class? And they say, well, I don't really feel that comfortable with research. I feel that I don't have the skills. I haven't refined them. I don't have the experience. And so some of them are kind of scared that they feel like they're not ready for this class. And so then I temper their fears by explaining how I scaffold in the class, how I break up the large assignments to help them to successfully progress from one aspect of the project to another. And then when they get to the end of the class, they put together this complex research proposal paper. But I don't throw it at them at the beginning of the class. I gradually guide them through it. And then they become more ready to learn. I've allayed their fears, and they say, okay, and I assure them that I'm always there to answer their questions, and that they can email me and meet with me and everything. And so then they're ready to learn. So one of the things that I do is scaffold the content. And so scaffolding the content helps to motivate the students to learn, because the information, it's very complex, but it's chunked up in manageable pieces. And then they calm down and they say, okay, I'm ready to do this. So that's one example of how you can motivate students by helping them become ready to learn. Does anybody else have an example of any of these other sections on this chart? For instance, when students' skills and knowledge connect with the course content. If students feel that the course content connects with something that they're interested in, then they're more willing to learn. One of the things that can, yes, Dan, did you have a question?
Hello, Yvonne. Yeah. Well, actually, I was going to give an example of the second item there. The skills and knowledge connect with course content. Actually, I teach a course in ethical decision making, and ethics is an area which I think everyone has the possibility of being connected. So I just try to draw that out in their own life experience, explaining what ethics is and what an ethical dilemma is. And usually what they'll do is they'll provide some examples of in their own life where they had to face an ethical dilemma, or at least knew someone who had to do that. And once you get them connected to that, and they see it as being very relevant to their own lives, not as some sort of abstract concept that may not touch any part of them, then they're more likely to get involved and engaged in the course.
Okay, thank you, Dan. That's a great example. I do the same thing with the research course that I teach, in trying to highlight and have the students identify ways that they research in the class. And like you said, have the students identify ethical dilemmas. So that's an excellent example. Thank you, Dan. Okay, and then in terms of their goals and self-regulation strategies fit the course requirements. If their goals connect with the course requirements, then they'll be more likely to be engaged. If it's a required course, such as some of the ones I teach, then there's definitely a connection, because they know that they need the class to complete their degree. So there's a connection between their goals and the course. Also, if they have the appropriate time allotted that they feel that they can be successful in the class. Also, what motivates students is if the course instructions support their needs and they get the feedback that they need. We often talk about timely feedback. That is so important in terms of supporting students' needs. If they complete an assignment and it is graded shortly after they have completed the assignment and they can incorporate the suggestions in their next assignments, then that's a motivating type of a feedback mechanism. But if there's a long time period between when the students submitted the assignment and it is graded, then they may lose motivation. So we need to be cognizant of that. Okay, thank you. All right, so let's talk about your classes. In terms of motivating and engaging students, what can you do on the first day of class? There is a lot of research that shows that what happens on the first day of class is very powerful and it's very important in terms of setting that foundation for a strong, engaging teaching and learning interaction for that course. So if you could please type some strategies that you can use on your first day of class to engage the students, because we don't want them to look like this. We don't want them to be, sleeping or uninterested. We want them to look like that first group with everybody was engaged. Okay, icebreaker. Okay, that's a great idea. Thank you. And does anybody use icebreakers in their class? I know, Dan, you said that you use icebreakers. I use icebreakers as well. Okay, great, thank you. And something involves moving along with ice. Okay, yes, that's a good idea. Using movement. One of the things that I do in my blended courses where I teach some face-to-face sessions and some online sessions, I will use sort of a hybrid introductions exercise. So I'll have a list of questions that are connected to the students personally, professionally, and to the course, but I put a couple of twists in it. So I pair students up and I have information about what their interests are, showing the connection between the course and students' life and interest. Yes, that's a great idea. And that's something that can be done in an introduction icebreaker type of exercise. So I'll have the students share information about what's of interest to them, what they want to learn in the course, how the course connects with their interests, but basically they're interviewing another person. So they are filling out this introduction sheet on their partner, and then they introduce their partner. Instead of just introducing yourself, they introduce their partner. And one of the people mentioned that something that involves movement. That is very important. If you're in a face-to-face class, you can have students get up, move to the other side of the room, and then I also incorporate that in the introduction exercise. So the students are actively getting engaged. They are starting to focus on what is of interest to them, how it connects with the course. They're introducing other people, so there's another layer of engagement, and they're moving around the course, around the classroom. So there's just a few little aspects of that activity that kind of take it to the next level. And I always have a question in that first activity that takes them and connects it to the research proposal paper, which is their major project at the end of the course. So from that first moment, I have them start to think about what they're going to work on in the course. And then every activity builds up to that. So they see relevance, and it kind of gets their blood moving as well. Okay, thank you. Yes, introductions of themselves, yes. Okay, So one of the people said that their professors have used that type of activity. Yes, relevant outcomes and activities. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Another thing that you need to think about is how the student's temperament and disposition. We talked about that a little bit earlier. And this diagram shows how these various factors impact the interactions in the class. So if they're in a good mood, they're ready to learn, that's awesome. But they might not be. Maybe something happened. Maybe they got in a car accident on their way to school, or maybe something happened that that they're kind of focused on something else. So you want to begin the class by helping them focus on what you're going to be talking about that day. There are also different levels of skills and background knowledge that students have. So when you're teaching, you need to make sure that you have information that is available for the students that are brand new to the concepts being addressed in the class, and then also for those that have some knowledge and some for those that have advanced knowledge, so that there's something for the various levels of knowledge and skills in the classroom, so that all of the students feel that they can be successful. And fortunately, with the resources on the internet now, it's much easier for us to incorporate the variety of different levels of knowledge in our Blackboard courses and our courses with students today. Students also come to the learning situation with different self-regulation strategies and coping strategies. Some of them are very good at balancing their time, scheduling their time. Some of them are not as good. So we'll talk about those type of strategies in the third session when we talk about the last aspect of UDL. And the type of instructions also impacts students' success and motivation in the class. One of the things that I do in my classes is I provide information in the syllabus about the different assignments. I provide information in the Blackboard online management system about instructions. I provide samples for the students to look at so they can see exemplars. I also provide YouTube videos so that if some students need to look at an example, they may have a visual representation of the assignment. I also have just narrative instructions, and then a YouTube video. So I can videotape just a short introduction to the assignment to explain it, and then you can also engage the closed captioning on those videos so that students have more ways to get the instructions than just reading them. And so that supports a variety of different learners' needs in the classroom. Okay, so one of the things that we have in our 21st century lives is information. So if you look at this screen, this is a whiteboard activity. What comes to your mind when you see all of these different icons? What do these icons mean to you? These are things that we experience every day. So if you could type a word or something that comes to your mind when you're just brainstorming about these. Okay, social media, yes. Okay, social media, communication, okay, online platforms, okay, instruction, okay, okay, MOOCs, okay, massive online open courses, okay. Somebody put noise, okay. So there are different perspectives, tools to stay in contact, okay. So ways to stay connected, yes, collaboration, okay. So you've identified that these are ways to connect, they are ways to communicate, they are ways to learn, they are ways, it could be noise in the sense that it might be too much. Sometimes people who haven't developed the strategies to really monitor and regulate their social media interactions, they might get information overload. So these are outstanding ways to communicate and learn, and we also need to regulate our use with them. But these are tools that every one of us has access to, and every one of our students has access to 24 hours a day. So we can use them to our advantage and use them as teaching and learning tools in our face-to-face, blended, and online classrooms. So knowing that there are so many different ways for people to share information, as instructors, how do we help the students focus? Because we need to make sure that when we get them in the classroom, whether it's an online classroom or it's a face-to-face classroom, or we have some online and some face-to-face, we need to help them focus on their learning. So how can we do that? Some of the ways to help them with their focus and help with the engagement that relate to the affective network are, as we've been talking about, student interests. So we have people in this session today from a variety of different disciplines. So if there is some way that you can connect your discipline, your content with student interests, then that really increases their engagement. And there's substantial research that shows that when we connect with the affective aspects and with the emotional aspects of learning, that students remember the information. They remember those moments that were connected with their affective dimensions. So we need to make sure that we can connect with the students' interests. So how can we do that with some of those tools that we have available today? Well, one of the things I was thinking, there are a lot of people who use these fitness monitors. I have one on my wrist right now. And so if you have students using those, or now there's all kinds of different devices that people use, smart watches, everybody has smartphones. How can we use those selfie sticks to engage the students? Well, you could have students go out, regardless of what the topic is, and you could have them take pictures with their phone. And then they can bring this information in. They could share it in the Blackboard course, and they could connect those things of interest to them that connect with the content of the course and share it. And that shows that students that you value their input, that you're communicating with them in a way that they are accustomed to communicating in this 21st century world. You can also give them choice. If it's appropriate, they can't always have choice, but in some of the more of the formative assessment assignments that occur as the students are learning the information, you might be able to give them a choice between a couple of different types of assignments to allow them to feel that they're empowered, but they can still show that they are meeting the learning requirements and learning objectives of the course. Also, authenticity is very important. It's important that students know that what they're studying is relevant, that it's going to be applicable in the real world. Now, those of you from NIU know that we have quite a few examples of students learning and applying their skills to the real world. This particular picture is of the car that the students in the engineering department built. And this one was last year, I think it was last year, when the students became famous with this car. They had designed this car, and it got, I don't remember what the gas mileage is. I think it was around 1,000 miles or possibly even more per gallon, which is very impressive. And they were on the news, they were on different talk shows. explaining their experiences and showing this car. And students get very, very excited about this. They stay up very long hours working on this project because they chose to work on it. It's connected with their interest, and it's authentic. So if you can try to work this into your courses, then students will be more engaged. Okay, so now thinking about your classes, take a moment and reflect on how could you address students' interests in your classes, provide authentic learning experiences. Is there a way that there could be different assignment options or some way to incorporate choice? So if you could share some ideas on that, how you might use different strategies in your classes to address the students' interests, bring authenticity into the class, give them different options if possible. And you can type those on the whiteboard. Okay, somebody said they could use a video option. Okay, somebody else said that students select the topic for the first assignment. Okay. What about authenticity? Okay, so students choose an assignment based on their major or interest. Okay, that's excellent. That would definitely connect with the students' interest. They can apply the concepts of your course to their major or their interests. So yes, that's a great way. Okay. Assignment, they could give a presentation or write a paper. Okay, that's great. So if someone prefers to write, they can do that, or they could do a presentation. Okay. All right, photo options, yes. And with the various tools that we have now with the photo editors and combining different things with our smartphones and multimedia, there are great ways that they could take photos and share them in your class and explain how that connects with your course concepts. Okay, videos. Apply the course concepts to the real world. So authentic type of application. So, and that can be done in every discipline or field. Okay, great. Thank you. Some other aspects when you're addressing engagement and the affective network is very important to provide clear expectations. Because if the instructions are not clear or the goals for the assignment are not clear, students may become confused and then they don't feel as engaged in the project. I find that when I work with blended and online courses, I include instructions in several different places in the Blackboard course. And I make sure that they're very clear and that they're aligned with the course objectives and with the assignment grading aspects related to a particular assignment. And then students feel that the expectations are clear and they feel more motivated to complete the project because they feel that they can be successful. They know what the instructions are, they know the expectations, and they know how the assignment is going to be graded. So when that is very clear, then their motivation is optimized. It's also very important to balance resources and demands. So make sure that what you assign and the resources that you provide in a particular course is reasonable for completion within whatever period of time you assign. I teach 8-week accelerated graduate level courses. And so I think very carefully about how to chunk up those assignments, because the major projects are due very, very quickly. So I, keep contact with the students and make sure that they feel that they have enough resources and that the demands on their schedule are congruent and they feel that they can be successful. And I've been revising the courses over a period of about almost 10 years now, and have really gotten to where it's a good balance. The students feel that even though they're very short accelerated courses, they do believe they can be successful because they have the resources that they need and they have the time that they need so that they can complete everything within the appropriate time. And provide different levels of challenge. We often have students who come into the class, they may be new to the concepts that you're talking about, or some of them may be more advanced. And so it's important to include various levels of complexity of information so that the students who are starting at the more entry level can get up to speed, and the students at the more advanced level can be challenged. They don't feel like they're not learning. You need to make sure you include various levels of challenge for the students. Okay, so let's conduct another whiteboard activity. So what strategies could you use in your class to help students think that they can be successful? How could you adapt your assignment instructions to make sure that they're understandable? What about clear expectations? What types of tools do you use to provide clear expectations to your students so that they know what they're supposed to do and what level is considered proficient? And how do you help them balance the resources and demands in the class? Okay, yes, rubrics, that's excellent. Yes, rubrics are an outstanding way to help students and show them what is expected, and they'll be graded. Okay, assignment prompts, yes. Assignment prompts are a great way to help students get on the right path, guide them toward what you're trying to get them to achieve in the class. Okay, give them a schedule for the whole semester as they plan. Yes, that's excellent. And I know I do that as well, and students appreciate that, and they put it in their smartphones, and they set up reminders. So those schedules are very important for students to be successful. And when the students have the schedule, then they can plan, and then they can say, okay, I need a specific amount of time to be successful, to get everything done for the whole semester. So that helps support them feeling like they can be successful. And then with the rubrics, if you connect those with the assignment instructions, then the students read the instructions, they clearly understand what they're supposed to do for the assignment, and then they can look at the rubrics and they say, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do, I know how it's going to be graded, I can plan my time, and I feel like I can be successful. So you can see how these different components all work together. And it's very important to address all of these in your class, and then the course will go more smoothly for you as the professor, and for your students, their learning will be, they'll be able to learn more of the content and apply it. Okay, so as I said, the expectations need to be clear, the learning goals need to be clear. So we talk about those as being learning objectives. Explain to them what the learning objectives are, what the learning goals are, and ask them if they have any questions so that they're clear on that. Think about what materials you could use to help students reach their learning goals? Is there some kind of supplemental information? Are there online resources that you can provide them? Are there resources on campus? There are many, many resources on campus, and for those of you off campus, online, that can help students be successful. Think about what instructional methods you might use to help students learn. There are many, many different instructional methods, and so if you use a variety, of different instructional methods, then when you're interacting with the students, you'll reach more of the learners because you're using different techniques to engage them. And they have different learning preferences, so you'll vary those different instructional methods to reach all the students. Also, think about the types of assessments that you'll use. How are you going to evaluate the student's skills and knowledge? And it's important to use formative assessments while the students are learning, so you can do some quick checks of their knowledge. Are they getting it? Ask some quick questions. You can have some smaller low-stakes assignments to have them submit an assignment before their big projects are due, so you can give them some feedback, and then you can give them suggestions. And then when they submit the bigger assignments, they'll have already been able to revise their work based upon your comments. So when you're thinking about assessments, it's important to really think about, does this assessment approach make the most sense for evaluating the students' learning? And we have separate workshops on designing effective assessments and formative and summative assessments. So if you're interested in those, you can sign up for those and then get more detail on that. Some of the things that you can do to help students with their learning goals is assign students a journal assignment where they provide feedback on every class. If it's an entry-level class and maybe this is their first exposure to the concepts and your discipline, you might have them do just a short journal, and they can reflect on what they were supposed to have learned in that session, how their learning is progressing. They can ask questions and get clarification. And those quick learning journals also help you monitor their progress, so you can help them along the way. You can also have weekly reflections to help students they can critically reflect upon what they've been learning and their progress. And I actually include reflective aspects in all of my assignments now. And the purpose of that is to help students kind of step back and think about, okay, what are the challenges and opportunities related to this assignment? What could I do differently? How can this apply to my life beyond education? And when they start to reflect and apply information on a regular basis, then they can see the authenticity of the concepts that you're learning in class, and they stay more engaged. Also, in terms of materials and strategies, if you provide specific examples from the field to demonstrate how, you're talking about this in lecture, but if you can provide examples or bring in experts or show information of how this topic is really playing out in the real world, that will help a lot. And then have hands-on applications to provide them the opportunity to apply what they're learning. When you think about your instruction, if you have face-to-face classes, even the setup of the chairs in the class is very important. Now, everyone doesn't have the flexibility to move chairs. If there's a lecture hall and the chairs are fixed to the floor, that's one thing. But if you can move the chairs and create a discussion type of arrangement, then that will help increase the engagement among the students, just the way you have the chairs setting. And then you can assign them to do some of those think, pair, share activities where you have some prompts. Someone mentioned a little bit earlier assignment prompts. Give them some assignment prompts. They can think about those prompts related to the concepts of the course. And then you have them talk to somebody about it and get another person's opinion, and then they share with the whole class. And so that facilitates helping the students who need time to reflect. Some people like to reflect and think quietly. So when you have those assignment prompts, that helps everyone collect their thoughts before they start analyzing and sharing with the entire class. Those are very effective approaches. NIU has quite a few service learning type projects and group work activities. So there are ways that students can engage with professors and contribute to the larger community, so the students can see that their work is making a difference. And they also learn how to collaborate and work on a team. And so it sort of takes the learning to another level, takes it outside of the classroom. And then you can incorporate formative and summative assessments in the service learning or group projects. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left. If you could, we'll do another whiteboard activity. If you could type what strategies you could use in your class in terms of explaining the learning goals to students, what different types of instructional methods could you use, different types of materials, or different types of assessments. So if you could type in there what might be ways that you can incorporate a little bit of variety into your class. Okay, someone said videos, okay. Okay, personal videos, yes, that's awesome, because that shows that you value their perspective and that they're sharing it with the class. That's awesome. Okay, case-based learning. You can use case studies to apply concepts in a variety of different disciplines. Okay, how could you explain the learning goals in different ways? Okay, somebody said video. So you could explain them in a video. I frequently record short videos explaining to the students the module and explain the learning goals. What are they to focus on this week? And what are going to be the activities and assignments? Okay, different types of materials. Okay, so again, you can, different videos. Okay, somebody said documents. Okay, oral presentations rather than a written paper. Yes, that's excellent. So you have people sharing information in different ways. And I had a class a couple of years ago where one of the students was really not engaged, and I thought about it for a while, and so I incorporated some additional options, and I incorporated video. And when I incorporated that, as well as with the class discussion, some of the students really took advantage of that, and really their voice really came out. Okay, outside speaker who's an expert in the field. Okay, yes, panel discussions and class discussions. Yes, that's great. Okay, so you can see there's a variety of different instructional strategies that you can use. Okay, so you can interact when discussing the goals. Okay, that's great. Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, one of the things that Northern Illinois University implemented last year was the electronic portfolios program, and we rolled that out with quite a few students on campus. The English, first and second year English, University one-on-one students, and a number of other programs are using those. So portfolios, electronic portfolios, are an excellent way to allow students to show what they've learned in a different way. And it can really motivate them because they can see how everything is coming together. You can also have social learning communities. We have those learning communities on campus. That helps with creativity and collaboration, and helps with social and academic engagement. And then case-based learning helps with providing multiple perspectives, modeling best practices in the workplace, which connects with that authenticity as well. I have a few references that are related to universal design for learning, and those will be on the recording. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap up the session? Okay, I want to just thank you all for coming today and for your engagement. And if you, okay, thank you very much, Autumn. Have a good day. If you have any questions, you can always contact the Faculty Development and Instructional Design Center, and we are happy to help you. Thank you all, and have a great day. Bye. Thank you. Bye.